Hey guys, it's Pam again. So today's video should be very short. I say that, but Chatty Cathy over here. So I just wanted to go real quick on ground covers that I use. Um, so basically, you use a ground cover. It's something you put into the soil to kind of cover over and prevent splashing out when it rains, erosion. And so, but they've also, and this is something that wasn't really talked about very much, even back in my hippy dippy days of the 70s. Um, but they're finding now with all the biomes and bacteria and fungi and things like that in the soil normally that are actually needed there in order to augment the growth and health of the plants that we have in our soil. And so hi Jay, you want to be on candid camera? No? Okay. Um, so at least around here, what happens is I call them old timers. I can say that because I am an old timer. But what they'll do is in the fall, they will get out their tractor and their plow and they will go and till up the spot where they have their garden. And then they'll just leave it over the winter. Sometimes they'll throw like manure from the cow barn or, something like that. Very rarely will they put something like ryegrass or something like that over it and then till it up in the spring. But most of the time, what I go by and see is I see the garden spot that's in the same spot every year. And they do the same exact thing. They till it in the fall, let it sit over the winter, and then before they start planting in the spring, they till it up again, and then they kind of, do a fine tilling to kind of get rid of weeds and that kind of stuff. And then they plant everything in straight rows, mark it out with a couple of pegs and string, plant their plants. Everything's in rows. And I will admit it, once upon a time I did that too. Now that I'm getting into more of the raised beds and things like that, I'm okay with growing in blocks. So what I generally tend to do is I try not to leave the soil in my raised beds bare, especially over the winter. But if I have a raised bed that, maybe I take something out early spring and I'm not really going to plant anything there for, a month, a couple months, 3 months, something like that. That's rare. But what I will do is I will do some row covers, some cover crops. And everything, there are so many different things depending on what you actually need to achieve. Are you growing on hardpan and you need something that's got big hefty roots like daikon reddish and things like that will help break up the soil underneath? Do you need some kind of legume crop like clover or alfalfa that will help pull up and bring nitrogen to the soil, stuff like that? So I have a few different things that I use at different times. I don't at this time really have anything that specifically, oh yes I do, I have annual rye, not winter rye, annual rye. Generally what happens with the annual rye is it gets planted in like late summer, early fall, let it get going, then the frost hits it and it kind of stops growing stuff. Everything stops growing, but there's enough of it there. It gets knocked down with the wind and the rain and things like that, and it just kind of acts like straw. The roots are in the soil and helping to hold things together. And then by the time spring gets here, you can just go through, and a lot of times all you need to do is take like a leaf rake and just rake off the dead blades of grass that grow up there and then start planting. Haven't done that in a while because basically what I've been doing in the wintertime is covering things with straw and or mulch, just mulch from ground, trees that have been chopped up, kind of deal. You know the name of it. Name's not coming to me now. I have a big mound of it out in the front yard. Anyway, so a couple of things that I'm really interested in doing. I've got a few different clovers here. I've got crimson clover. I have yellow blossom sweet clover and a variety of sweet clover called hubam or hubum. And all three of these will be helpful with nitrogen fixing with their nodules. But what I usually end up doing is rather than cutting it down before it flowers, I let it flower. And the hubam especially is supposed to be really good for the bees. I just need to remember that I have this stuff so I can actually get it planted for them. I may actually do, there are a couple areas that don't really have a lot of, they're not good areas for growing stuff on, but I may throw out some of this seed with a couple other things, just kind of see if maybe, it'll help things, kind of hold things together. I also have hairy vetch. I really don't need to grow this very much because it comes up wild, but there are a few areas I would like to actually intentionally plant it. Again, when it goes to flower, bees really like it. I've got orchard grass, and this is actually a type of grass that's very often grown for hay for livestock, things like that, but it's also can be used for things like rye and things like that, just as a straight grass to kind of smother weeds. And when you turn under the green stuff, it helps to bulk up and breaks down and that kind of stuff. This stuff I also throw out in areas where the soil isn't all that great, but it's not in actually a planting area. I just kind of throw it out there just so it can kind of maybe take hold and start covering up. And then my favorite is buckwheat. So this is a pound of buckwheat that I got at Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. This is just the general white flowered buckwheat. I grew some of this last year and it did really well. I just need to remember to get out there and cut it down. Again, I let it go to flower for the bees because the bees really like it, but I need to get in there before it goes to flower and then starts producing seeds, because then I was getting a lot of regrowth when I had crops and stuff in. And basically I just go in and I just, with clippers or scissors or anything like that, depending on how much there is, loppers, if you've got the hedge trimming loppers, just go through there and you're done. You could just do it with a weed whacker if you had that big of a space. So far I haven't done that. Usually this stuff is up and gone within 4 to 6 weeks. So even with flowering. So this is just the straight white flower kind. And then I got a kind of buckwheat at Baker Creek that has red flowers. So I may try that just for, see how pretty it is. Obviously this was $4 for a packet of 75 seeds, and I bet you good money I didn't pay anywhere near that for a pound, which has got thousands of seeds. So yeah, I think I'm also going to throw this out in areas that need help too, and then I won't care if it goes to seed or not. I've thought of intentionally growing a patch and just seeing about getting the buckwheat, actual buckwheat, though I could do with this too. But yeah, just to see. But I don't do enough with buckwheat culinarily for me to eat. I mean, buckwheat pancakes and stuff like that. I don't do that often enough to make it worth it. But yeah, so if you've noticed, I do a lot of stuff. I grow a lot of stuff, veggies and stuff for me, but the flowers and the herbs and things like that generally tend to be for my bees. You'd think they'd be a little bit more, sympathetic and less likely to sting me when I go out and check on them. But they're grouchy just like me, so I guess they get that from me. But yeah, so that's what I have currently for my cover crops. I do need to use them more. Definitely the buckwheat's going to go in. Probably use some of these to kind of fill in blank spots just in areas that will eventually be garden space but aren't now, just because there's a lot of runoff and that kind of stuff. Plus the fact that I need to use this because, you know, this is a lot of seed. I could reseed this entire pasture on my property. Nothing but buckwheat. I don't think my neighbor who comes over and mows the grass for the hay would appreciate it. But maybe he would. He might enjoy a little buckwheat in his grass hay. But yeah, so just quickie. Hey, 11 minutes. What a record. So, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any cover crops that you really enjoy, had problems with, had success with, suggestions for what not to grow, why do it, why don't do it, that kind of stuff, leave it suggestions below in comments. And as always, make sure if you like listening to grumpy old me, like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. You know, I want to be one of these YouTube 100-airs one day. It's not gonna happen, but it's good to be liked. So, bye. Less than 12 minutes. Yay.